Hi everyone, I'm Maimah Karmo and I'm your host for BREATHETv, a safe space to come to exhale and to feel loved and supported throughout your breast cancer journey. I'm so happy to have three guests with me today who are just phenomenal women. Ashley Dedmon, an angel advocate and BRCA2 previvor, Dr. Regina Whitfield, an OBGYN and breast cancer thriver and warrior, and Gwen Turner, who will be sharing their expertise and their stories. Before we start, though, I really want to honor the space that we're in today about breathing. As you all know, when we go through breast cancer, we stop breathing. We can't think, we can't process. And what's really helped me is to learn to breathe. I played a meditation that is by one of my favorite artists who's a meditation guru, and her name is Sarah Blondin. And so I'm going to take you guys through a beautiful meditation. It's just 2 sentences, but it just really speaks to the importance of loving people, grounding us all in what we're here to talk about. You can put your hand over your heart or over your belly and just repeat these phrases after me. I love you. I am listening.
I love you.
Love you.
I am listening.
I'm listening.
I love you. I am listening.
I love you. I'm listening.
I love you. I am listening.
I love you. I'm listening.
I love you. I am listening.
I love you. I'm listening.
I love you. I am listening.
I love you. I'm listening.
I love you. I am listening.
I love you. I'm listening.
Thank you. We'll be talking about the importance of biomarker testing, genetic testing, and understanding how they work, why it's important, and how to have the right healthcare team to support you along your journey. So I'm going to start with Ashley, who is a public health professional and someone who I love and adore. Ashley, can you say a bit about yourself, your story, who you are, and what makes you so phenomenal as a human being?
So my name is Ashley Dedmon, and as you shared, I am an angel advocate. I am a BRCA2 mutation carrier. I was tested through Myriad genetics. And a little about me, I have a family history of breast cancer on my mother's side. On my maternal side, my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother were all impacted by breast cancer. My mother had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. She was diagnosed at 49, and then she transitioned at 52. You know, it's definitely been a journey. I've worn many hats, and that was first of being a caregiver for my mother, being a caregiver for my father, who was a caregiver for her, and then being my father's caregiver. And during that journey, I was really questioning my own health and really if cancer was going to come for me. I really felt like I was next. Being a caregiver and being a supporter, then I had to then navigate my own journey as a BRCA2 mutation carrier after getting tested for the BRCA mutation and navigating now my own journey through my risk management options. I did over 10 years of increased surveillance, which aggressively monitored my breast and ovarian health. Genetic testing gave me that knowledge that I carried this mutation and that my standard of care looked different. And in December 2016, I elected to have a preventative double mastectomy and reconstruction the following March. And so my journey still continues to this day. I continue to advocate on behalf of Myriad, as well as an angel advocate with Tigerlily. And I'm super glad I just finished the NBC Angels Impact Series. It was an amazing course. But I'm also a mom of 2 girls, and that's really where I want to continue the work, is to educate and equip and empower my girls to be advocates for their health, because I know they have a 50% chance of having inherited my BRCA2 gene mutation. And I want them to be able to better understand their family history, as well as prepare them for genetic testing and counseling, should they so choose in the future.
Yeah, I love how you've taken generational health as generational wealth. You know how important that is, and you've seen your mother and father both be touched by cancer. And we've had this conversation before about how that changed your life. Losing your mom and then having a dad have cancer. And a lot of women are afraid to know because they think if they don't know, they don't have to deal with it. And a lot of women of color as well. You know, we have so much higher breast cancer aggression levels and so many things that are not working in our favor. And what you've done through your advocacy, through your heart and your commitment, is you're changing that for women and showing them what's possible and why it's possible and why it's important. So thank you, Ashley. Dr. Regina Whitfield is the next person I want you all to meet. And she has a lot of titles, and she's a highly esteemed OBGYN, a physician, a national speaker and author, a women's health expert, and a breast cancer thriver. Can you share a bit about your background, about your breast cancer journey, and why testing is so important to you, why you're in this field?
Absolutely. So again, I'm Regina Whitfield Kakesi, and I am a 4-year cancer survivor, a practicing OBGYN in Cincinnati. And my breast cancer story appeared as it appears with many. I went in for a routine mammogram, and an area of microcalcifications was noted on the screening mammogram between a 5 and 7 millimeter area. It was an interesting experience to be a physician advocating and educating patients on a daily basis, and now I'm wearing a patient hat. I had to spend a good week processing that information. It was towards the end of the year. We're preparing, to bring in the new year in Las Vegas with me and my husband, and we were walking in a daze for a few days, trying to process how are we going to handle this. We had some other things going on in our lives as we were preparing to bring a newborn into the world and to our family through adoption. And so it was just a lot going on. But, after you cry and you process and you're stunned and you recover, you have to shake it off and say, hey, we have to figure out how to tackle this as quickly as we can. What do I need to do? I wasn't clear on a significant family history, but because of my age, I requested to be screened and did come back with a gene mutation of undetermined significance, a P10 gene mutation. So I learned about P10. Our local hospital and facility had a wonderful integrated service through our Cancer Institute, and from diagnosis to the recommended treatment, including surgery, it was done within a month. So I am blessed to be a part of a system that embraces genetic testing, education, integrative care. It is a blessing to be here, to be able to share my story.
It's a blessing to have you and to have you as a physician, and to see your survivorship and how you're thriving and giving back. And so thank you for your story. Thank you for your service as a physician, a Black woman physician, and for all that you do. Next, we have Gwen Turner. who's the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion and engagement at Myriad Genetics. As we know, women of color are not often offered testing or can't access them, and your job is to work to fix those things that are barriers for those who are underserved for whatever reason. Can you share more about what you do at Myriad to help ensure that DE&I is part of the backbone of your organization and is implemented?
My role at Myriad Genetics is one that is just an awesome role because it really impacts the lives of our patients. And the work that I do is internal with our workforce, but also external with our patients. And so the exciting thing is to have an opportunity to hear these stories, but to also impact women who don't know about genetic testing, have never heard of genetic testing, to give them the access and information and the resources that they need in order to get the testing that's available to them. There are so many women who don't know about hereditary cancer testing. And so I think that a part of my calling in coming to this organization is to be able to be an advocate, to spread the word, to be able to build up an infrastructure where we have more genetic counselors of color. Right now, there are less than 2% of genetic counselors are people of color, right? We want to change that number, and we have to ensure that we're out doing some very active things in order to do it. My job is not just to talk about the numbers, but to put some action behind it, to really come up with some programs to support those that are on the ground doing this work, to support our physicians, particularly in underserved communities, whether they be people of color or not, but giving them the culturally competent tools that they need in order to get the job done.
You know, I really believe in being our sister's keeper. And so when you know better, you do better. And it's just great to have women that they can trust and they know that they learn why it's important and get tested. So Dr. Whitfield, I'm going to come back to you. You're the first line people see before they become diagnosed with breast cancer. They go to the OBGYNs. So why is recommending genetic testing for your patients as appropriate so important? And how can you be able to really educate them in a way that makes them feel comfortable and educated and empowered to make those timely decisions about their testing and their health journey?
I encourage patients to think about their loved ones. So they may have a fear of knowing and what am I going to do with that information, but I help them to understand their choice to test for a genetic mutation not only helps them and empowers them, but it impacts their children and their children's children. I help patients to recognize that a choice to do nothing is still a choice. Some patients, immediately express concern that, oh my goodness, I'm going to have surgery. What I try to help patients to understand is, removal of a breast is not always the first recommendation. There is an opportunity for surveillance, and insurance covers it. So sometimes there is a fear of the cost, there's a fear of, what am I going to do with the information? Certainly women of color and the Black and brown communities are very private. We prefer not to talk about, diagnoses. We don't want to worry anybody. If one person is able to have that discussion, then it opens the door. And certainly a platform like this helps one to learn different approaches of how to open a door to the discussion.
I was going to ask you, Ashley, so, you made a big decision to get the testing and to go through a prophylactic mastectomy, and you're doing so much to make sure that you're on top of things when it comes to your health. What was that like in terms of finding out, for one, and then knowing that you're a mom, you were a wife, you were a young woman, you want to have more children? You mentioned to me one time that you wanted to be able to breastfeed, but you knew that if you had the mastectomy, you wouldn't be able to. So it's not just the decision about your health, it's about your femininity, your womanhood. Can you share from a patient perspective, and a young woman's perspective, a young mom, what that was like for you?
In the beginning, it was a lot of fear. At the time, I was a single woman, no children. I was a teacher at the time, so I was able to go to the doctor every 6 months. I got married and we had our first child. And, as women, we wear so many hats. And so I had to really stop because I saw myself canceling appointments and rescheduling appointments. And I knew that was a big no-no. I knew that that was something I could not do because that's what my mother did, because life got in the way. And so I knew better. So I had to do better. And so I immediately went back to my high-risk oncologist, and we talked about prophylactic or preventative mastectomy. And that was definitely a journey in itself, because it was what I thought at the time taking away a piece of my womanhood. How would my femininity look? And so I was able to breastfeed my first daughter, and that was so important to me, just having that bond and that connection. But I knew going forward, in our family planning, we wanted to have more children. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to breastfeed that baby. And I wondered if I would be okay with that. And at the time, I felt I would be okay with it. But when I was actually in the moment where I couldn't breastfeed my daughter, that's when I felt like I failed her, But my husband had to remind me, as my support system, you're not able to breastfeed her, but you're here for her. Yes. And I think that was huge. And that was just reminding me that I didn't make the wrong decision. I made the right decision. I was just having those feelings and emotions at that time. And they were important, they were valid, and they were real. But the fact was that I had a family history. I have this gene mutation, and I have an increased risk to breast cancer. And I knew that I made the right decision. And so now my 2-year-old that I wasn't able to breastfeed, she's strong and vivacious. I would lay her in the middle of my chest, and she would almost squiggle down to lay right under my breast. And then I would pull her back up, and she would wiggle her way down. And I finally, after the third time, I just realized God was just saying, that she knows that they are for her. And that was just her little favorite place to just nestle under. And so it really just, it helped to affirm me as a mom that although I wasn't able to breastfeed her, I didn't fail her. And so it's still a journey you go through, knowing that you carry a mutation. It's a journey that you have to continue to live with day to day. And now that I have 2 daughters, this knowledge is now my responsibility to pass on to my daughters, so that they're able to make the same decisions that I did, and letting them know it's not going to be easy. There will be challenges, but at the end of the day, it's that empowerment of having their health at the forefront and being able to make those decisions.
It's a tough thing to do, but you didn't feel your daughter. You lived for her. And what you've done for your daughters is you're going to save their lives. You could save their lives. Yeah. So, as women, we think that, when you lose our breast or your ovaries, that we've lost a part of us. But there are times when you have to make these choices to be able to live your life. And we're not our breast or our hair. What your daughter really wants is to feel your heartbeat. Yes. Like you miss your mother. We talked about this last time. You miss her heart. And what she wants to feel and swiggle towards is your heartbeat. Not just the breast, and you're there, and your heart is huge and it's beautiful. And I'm sure women who are watching, who are thinking about this very thing right now, are going to be inspired by you, Ashley. Gwen, how does Myriad address disparities in healthcare, specifically as it pertains to getting tested for genetics to ensure that people can afford, access, and make the right choices to be able to decide what to do like Ashley did?
I think that our organization at Myriad has really invested our time and resources in developing products that are appropriate for everyone. We have a broader net of patients that we can cover. The testing had been done on Caucasian women, European women, historically. But we've been able to really expand our testing. So we have more tests, we have more research, and that is now available to anyone of all ancestries. And I cannot say that that's the case for other labs. We have been proactive in this, because of the story that Ashley just told, right? We want to be able to impact the lives of other families. Many women are afraid to go in for this testing. And I've talked to many women who are in underserved communities, and they'll ask me, where does my information go? Well, this information isn't something that you just mail into a doctor's office or you mail into an organization and they're able to test, but you are actually working with your physician on a plan. And Myriad Genetics also has a telehealth service where you can call in to get information around your results and ask questions. Actively have someone there to support your needs. And so I think it's important to know that this is about your overall health. It is not about tracking your ancestry. It is about understanding how we can help you with your health plan.
How easy is it to access hereditary testing for anybody, whether they're close to a big city hospital or a rural community?
It's interesting that you asked that question because we have various programs for rural communities, right? So we actively go into rural communities and partner with physicians to offer our testing. And you have to meet the guidelines, so that's important as well. We want women to have more control. We want to give them the information that they need so that they feel like they're not going into the doctor's office and the doctor is the person who's giving them all of the information. We want to equip women with information so that they can go into the physician's office and say, hey, I heard about this hereditary cancer testing, and these are the guidelines. And I want to know if I meet those guidelines so that I can get a test to understand my history. What I found is that, particularly in my family, and I'm, a test for this, is that even within my family, you don't talk about your health. You don't talk about why your aunt passed away or your uncle or your grandmother. To this day, there are people in my family that have passed away, and I'll ask questions, and people do not like to talk about those things. And so that's very difficult, particularly, there's some myths around that and being able to talk about that in families. And so it's really important to be able to go into your physician's office and discuss this with your physician so that you can get a test ordered for you.
So you mentioned the guidelines. Are the guidelines you're referring to those around, here's why you should get tested, or are the guidelines around affordability of getting genetic testing?
So the guidelines are around who can get tested based on their health background. It is not about affordability. We have programs for those that are uninsured to get tested and those that are underinsured. So if you're at a point where you feel like you're underinsured, we can provide resources to you, and those are available on Myriad.com. But there are a lot of tests there, and there's a lot of information there that can really walk you through how you can make this affordable to you. One of the big misconceptions is that this testing is for rich people. It's not for me, right? It's not for someone who is middle or lower income, and that's just not true. So we want to make sure that we bust that myth up, right? And we offer this test to those that may feel like it's not available to them by providing those resources to them.
You touched on an important point that patients should be able to ask about that, but some people don't really know. Dr. Whitfield, what are your thoughts? How can we help make sure that people are like Ashley, they have the power in their hands to go and ask for what they need and then advocate for what they need and then see the whole process through?
What we can do as a provider is help patients to understand, while we have some information that we'd like to cover, we want them to recognize that the whole point of coming to the appointment is for an exchange of information. We need to be able to say, what brings you in today? What questions do you have? And after we've addressed their questions, then we go on with the items that we need to cover. And I think it's important to close out the appointment. Were all of your questions answered? Do you have any additional concerns today? To help patients to recognize, it's not just about you coming in, us checking the box, making sure that we go through the points that we need to in order to, process our charges or what have you. It is a relationship that we want to have with the patient. The point of coming to the appointment is for an exchange of information.
My mom was not talked to or communicated with about genetic testing during her journey, and she went to 4 different comprehensive cancer centers. As my dad was navigating his journey, I had talked to him about genetic testing, but I also had to remember where he was in his own patient journey. You know, he had just lost my mom, he was just diagnosed. He said something that I had to go back and re-educate him about. He said, you know, I probably don't have the gene because, you know, you got it from mom, because mom had breast cancer and her mom had it. And I said, you're right. Mom and grandma and great grandma, they all did have breast cancer. I said, but dad, you are a prostate cancer survivor, and someone who, you know, someone who carries a BRCA mutation is at an increased risk for prostate cancer. Specifically, I'm speaking on BRCA2. And I said, and it's important that you know this because you have a brother and you have a sister who both have 5 children each. I said, so mom is gone and we can no longer test her. He called his oncologist and he called me back and he said, well, they said I don't meet criteria. I'm like, no, Dad, you do. I'm not a genetic counselor, but you meet criteria. I said, well, what did you say? And he said, you know, I told him that my wife had breast cancer and, you know, I want genetic testing. And I said, well, based off of that, you don't, because your wife is not your relative. And so I called back with him on the phone and I told him, I said, you know, his wife did die from breast cancer, but I carry a BRCA2 gene mutation. He meets criteria because we're directly related. And so based off of that, you know, he was able to go in, no problem, get genetic testing. He found out that he is negative. So I was able to confirm that I inherited my mutation from my mom and not my dad.
What do you want to see as your living legacy that is your nirvana as it pertains to testing and family history, empowerment, and how that knowledge can change people's lives and save a life?
Losing my mother was the defining moment of my life, but genetic testing was that pivotal moment. It changed the trajectory of the impact of this disease. And I always like to say, breast cancer aggressively attacked 3 generations of women in my family. But through genetic testing and counseling, my girls and I can aggressively and preemptively attack breast cancer. Breast cancer impacted 3 generations. And my hope and my prayer is that it won't be a 4th. And so that's really what I want to continue to see, to continue to advocate for men and women and Black families, as well as having my daughters to be able to carry out the legacy of the work that I'm doing, knowing that their grandmother made the ultimate sacrifice, and that was with her life.
Amen. Whenever I talk to you, Ashley, I always feel like your mom is just right there. She is, and she's so proud of you.
Thank you.
Really is.
I feel her, I do, and I see her in those 2 baby girls that I have.
Yeah, you're doing amazing things. Your legacy is already being felt around the world and in communities of color that need to see your face and hear your voice. And, you know, always be a shining light. Never give up and just keep being you. You are such a gem in the world. Dr. Whitfield, what is your living legacy?
My living legacy is to help patients to understand that even as a physician, I am not exempt, you know, from disease. I want patients to understand that I too am human. The impression is that, you know, as a physician, we're exempt from disease when we are probably suffering alongside many of the patients we treat. We just have to be more vocal about it. So my personal legacy is wanting to be able to share the information that I've learned as a patient and as a provider. I think we have a responsibility to, as you mentioned earlier, when you learn better, you do better. I think we have a responsibility to teach one as we learn. I've made efforts to share with my family my journey. And as we've talked about it, we've been able to recognize that there was more cancer in our family than we realized. And one thing that I've moved to try to do is to talk about it at our upcoming family reunion so that we can empower our family as a unit and the future generations. So that is the legacy that I wish to live and leave.
That's so amazing. It's so wonderful. Gwen, what is your living legacy?
Wow. Well, my living legacy is to be able to provide all women with the answers that they need to feel empowered about their health care. And I want to be able to, like Dr. Whitfield, provide information and resources to women, particularly women of color, so that they can make good decisions about their health care and their wellness, and so that they can better educate the rest of their family. I mentioned to you that I know very little about my health history in my family. And so it's really important for me to be able to not only educate myself, but to be able to better educate my sister and her daughters, to be able to educate my sons, for example, and just to be able to spread the word that this is something that can impact generations to come. And so the work that I do at Myriad is so important, so vitally important to doing just that, particularly getting the word out in minority or underserved communities.
Thank you, ladies, for this beautiful, warm, inspiring educational episode. I truly enjoyed all of you so much, and all you're doing, as a patient advocate, as a breast cancer survivor and a physician, and as an expert and leader in DE&I, in genetics, and what you do at Myriad is so important. And for me, my living legacy is to provide people a platform to learn, to listen, to heal, to grow, transform, and to have equity for all in this lifetime. And so I'm just really blessed to have brought these amazing, beautiful women to you today. I hope that you were educated and as inspired as I was. Once you know what your history is, you know how to be able to act to change the course of that history for the future. Until next time, love yourself, love your loved ones. Take care of yourself by being educated, being empowered, and by being your own very best advocate. Until next time, love y'all so much, and bye for now.